there's a double act for the last session of the day from myself and Lucy. So I'm Katie Muchan, I'm a hydrological data scientist in the National River Flow Archive team at UKCH. I'm based in Lancaster. And Lucy?
I'm Lucy Barker, I'm a hydrologist at UKCH in Wallingford and work in the National River Flow Archive and National Hydrological Monitoring Programme, which we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so we'll just do a little bit of background first for anyone who isn't familiar, just to provide a bit of context for the rest of the talk. So we both work in the UK National River Flow Archive. So it's the primary archive of UK hydrometric data, collating all the data that's recorded by the measuring authorities, which you can see down the bottom of the screen there. The archive holds now over 23 million mean flow values and about 250,000 peak flow values. So it's a big data set that we're looking after, updating and curating. And alongside all the data holdings, we've got a whole suite of metadata, spatial data and photos, for example, of the stations that are on the archive. And all of that data is freely and openly available to anyone who wants it, which is something we'll touch on a little bit later. And as part of the NRFA, we do analysis of the data that we hold under the National Hydrological Monitoring Programme. So this is providing a voice on hydrological reporting, so setting the current hydrological conditions in a historical context, doing reporting on extreme flood or drought events. So we've been quite busy over the last few years, and it's something that we do with the British Geological Survey, bringing in the groundwater level archive that they hold. So you can see some examples of some of the outputs there that you will maybe be familiar with: the hydrological summary, weather papers, reports, blog posts, and the water resources portal, which Lucy will talk about a bit later. So the NRFA and NHMP get really involved in the full range of what we call the hydrometric life cycle. So less so on the monitoring and network design side, although we have our own kind of set of sub-networks. The example you can see there is the benchmark network, which we use for trend analysis in near natural catchments. And in sensing and recording, again, because we're not collecting the data ourselves, we're collating it from the data providers, but we have sort of an overarching and overseeing role by sitting on, for example, the British Standards Committee in hydrometry. And if the kind of from an innovation kind of point of view, for the theme of today's conference, if you're really interested in the innovation in sensing and recording, then we'd point you to Nick Everard's webinar that he gave last year on YouTube. And Nick is always happy to chat about all kinds of new and exciting technology that he's heard about for flow measurement, to name a few. And then we get round to sort of the key things that the archive gets involved in: validation and archival of the data, analysing and disseminating the data out to the user community. And that's what we're going to focus on in today's talk. So we're going to talk about the past, present and future of quality control of data, analysing data in terms of long-term trends, but also the current status and how we've made steps in accessing data. So I'm going to start by talking about validation. So it's not the most fun topic, I'll admit, but the NRFA undertakes a secondary level of quality control of the data when it comes to the archive. And as part of our sort of overseeing role, we have a service level agreement with each of the measuring authorities. And as part of that, there are some performance indicators. And what this allows us to do is to look at over time at things like the completeness and quality of data submissions. And that's what you can see on the right hand side here on these graphs. So for completeness, we tend to find that there are small gaps at lots of stations. Which is interesting, and hopefully, those are the ones that are easy enough to infill, and we would hopefully get those infilled and fixed. Whereas when we get to data quality, we tend to find that there are bigger problems affecting longer periods of time at less stations. So that's the sort of headline that we've had out of acquiring and validating data since the early 2000s when the SLA was started. We've also done in the past some research into infilling techniques, using some basic statistical methods for infilling gaps in data, which is really important for analysis to have complete time series. So that's something that we've done in the past. And if we think about validation in its sort of core sense, then currently most of that is done in a visual and manual way, looking at hydrographs, which is really important, but it can be quite resource and quite time intensive. So there's some work that's been going on in the last couple of years or so, which I'm not going to profess to be an expert. So I've put at the bottom, if you have any big questions, please contact my colleague Matt Fry, because he will be able to answer them much better than I can. We've been looking at machine learning methods for looking at quality control of data. So the methods will predict the flows using data from other flow sites and rain gauges, and can also be used for infilling data. So it's kind of drawing together the validation and infilling work that we've done in the past. And this was first tested on the Cosmos soil moisture data that the UKCH has, but we've rolled it out to test it on the EA's live river flow data. So what you can see in the graph there, the blue flows are what first came through as the sort of live near real-time data. And you can't, it's not too easy to see, but you can see the red line there, which is what the machine learning had predicted as the flows, and then that was able to be flagged, and then the black you can see has come through as the corrected data, which has come through pretty close to what the machine learning predictions were. So that's good to see, and hopefully something that we can start building in a bit more operationally as time moves on. So we've got all of this data. We've done the validation, we've got these 23 or so million or so values. And so a big part of the work that we do is in analysing those data holdings. So the NRFA and NHMP have a kind of long history of publishing these trend analyses, generally using the UK benchmark network, which I mentioned earlier, is the network of near natural catchments. So that then we are looking at changes that aren't due to human influence. So there's a couple of examples there of papers that we've done, and some maps taken from one of those. And then after the benchmark network was updated in 2018, we published these trend plots on our website for the stations which come within the benchmark network, and those get updated each year when we add a year's data to the archive. So we're getting a bit more sort of up to date and a bit more, showing a bit more than just what's available in papers. And so that's on the kind of display side. And on the data side, there's a paper published earlier this year in Hydrology Research, where trends were looked at in the peak flow data alongside the mean flow data. So we're sort of expanding in data types as well. But all of these analyses are very static, just lots of maps, graphs in a paper or on the website. And so we've been thinking about how to make it a bit more interactive, so that the users have a way to sort of decide on the trend analyses themselves. And this is something that my colleague Adam Griffin has been working on. He's a statistician in the flood estimation handbook team, and he's built a shiny app which allows you to do interactive trend exploring and trend analysis. So this is just in the last bits of testing at the moment. We hopefully will release it quite soon. So keep an eye on our website, because we'll do some communications about that. But it allows you to do trend analysis for any station you choose in that drop-down box. You can change the data type between AMAX or daily flow. You can flick between stationary and non-stationary trends, which is a big sort of area of research that's grown in the last few years. And it produces all the same sorts of trend statistics as you can see in the graph there. And there's also an extra part which these plots are quite, they take me a while to get my head around. Allows you to do this multi-temporal analysis, which is this triangle plot as we call it. And it allows you to look at trends for any start and any end year in the record. So you can look at the impact of having shorter and longer records, which is something that we've done extensively in previous research, showing that if you get a trend in the shorter record, you don't necessarily have one in the longer record, because we're quite lucky in the UK to have some records that go back over 100 years. So we've got a good resource to work from. That's it on my half, so I'm going to hand over to Lucy.
Thanks, Katie. So continuing on the kind of the data analysis and synthesis part of the life cycle that you can see in the top of the screen there, thinking about the hydrological summary is what our key output from the National Hydrological Monitoring Programme. It reports on UK rainfall, river flows, groundwater levels, soil moisture and reservoir storage. It's been doing that each month since January 1989. And it provides a national synthesis of the current conditions, placing them in a long-term historical context. So yeah, the first one was published in January 1989, covering the month of December 1988. And so we're on 391 and counting, with edition 392 currently in production. So it's changed slightly since its first inception, which I think Terry Marsh probably wrote over half of those, or probably even 3/4 of those editions of the summary. And now we have a team of 6 of us that kind of rotate round and write those each month, but work together. But the key part of it is that we kind of taking the data we receive each month from the measuring authorities, and kind of developing the story of what's critical and important and relevant for the current hydrological situation across the country, capturing as much of that information as we can in about 1,000 words, which is quite a challenge. And sometimes you might have noticed the text is quite small because we've got too much to fit onto the page there. But what you will notice, Katie, if you want to click again, what you might notice that things probably haven't changed a huge amount since 1988. We still have a PDF or a document with maps and graphs in there. They might be slightly, less hand-drawn than they were in that first edition, but the content hasn't changed a huge amount in those 30 years or so. I should add, there's a little sort of that's appeared above the past there, because this isn't really in the past. It's something that we are continuing to do, and foresee that we wouldn't stop delivering the summary. But perhaps we've started to think about how we can deliver some of this supporting information in a more interactive way. Thank you. And some of you might have seen this already. This is our the UK Water Resources portal, which is an interactive web tool which allows you to look at hydrological status data in near real time for the UK. This screenshot was taken just yesterday, I think, and it's showing data for the 3rd of September. I actually took this before we loaded the data received for Wales, as part of the hydrological summary. So those dots, if you went on now, would be filled in for August. And this was built so it allows you to look at rainfall, river flows, groundwater levels, soil moisture data, and select the stations that you're interested in, rather than being kind of fixed with the ones that we present in the summary that the author is choosing to show. To support the story of the text of the summary. You're not reliant on us picking your favourite catchment to show in the hydrological summary each month. You can go straight to the portal and find your catchment and look what's happening in near real time. And this is all built around stakeholder needs, particularly for drought monitoring in the UK from a series of workshops. But it's not just focused on low flows. We can monitor the full range of conditions via the portal. So if you click again, Katie, there's a summary here of the different data types that are available, and you can see that we've got the 4 different data types, but under that there are lots of different kind of combinations of spatial resolutions and data types that are included. And for rainfall, river flows and groundwater, we've also got in there some standardized indicators which allow you to look at the current conditions against the past, but in a slightly different format. So using, for example, the standardized precipitation index and associated indicators. So you've got a lot of flexibility in what exactly it is that you look at, whether it's the spatial resolution, the temporal resolution, type of data, as well as the locations. Then if you click again, Katie, you've also got a lot more flexibility in how you look at the data. So there's the main kind of mapping interface, but there's a whole range of different graph styles that you can look at the current conditions in, whether that's using kind of the regime bandings, comparing to known drought events, whether you're selecting years that you want to, that you've picked to compare against, monthly data, daily data, using the high flow and low flow envelopes, and also using looking at the standardized indicators like that bottom plot there. But I think it's important to say that, you know, the portal wouldn't be what it is without the use of the live river flow data, which is for England, which comes from the Environment Agency's hydrology data API. And this means that river flow data are available within a couple of days of being monitored or being observed on the ground. But we also show this on the National River Flow Archive website on the station pages for the stations where we have those data. And it's about 800 stations across England. And you can see there the live data in red kind of stitched onto the NRFA data in black there to kind of see how we can compare that to the historical record for each of those catchments. And we get questions about this quite a lot, about what about the live data for other parts of the UK. And I think it's safe to say it's in progress at varying different rates in different parts of the country. So it is in progress, and as soon as that's available, we will be including that into the portal so that we have that nearer real-time update of data available. And moving on to kind of the dissemination data, it's a bit of an overlap here because the portal you could see as a way of disseminating data, of whether that's historical or near real-time data. But within the National River Flow Archive, we have an email, phone and help desk, which I'm sure many of you will have contacted in the past, and some figures here of kind of the number of requests we've had. This is from the help desk, and you can see that we have quite a big drop off in the kind of the last few years, and that's not because we've stopped helping people and giving data out. It's always there available for you. But in 2011 you started being able to download data directly from the website, and you can see that kind of tallies with when we start to see decreases in help desk requests. And in 2015, you could download all the data, all daily data, peak flow data, catchment boundaries and rainfall data for all of the NRFA stations. And again, you can see that peaks there around 2017-18 start to drop off. And again, it's not because we've stopped giving the data out or making that available. It's just that we've got another new way of kind of serving these data up. You can now access the NRFA data using our API, and so you can access it programmatically. There's really good help user guidance on the NRFA website at the link there, and there's examples of code you can use to access that using Python, for example, or you can access it in R using the RNFA package. And you can see that we've had some really massive downloads of time series data and metadata in the last few years. But it's important to say, as I mentioned, we are still here to help you get those data. If you want us to do the retrieval for you, you can just get in touch and we're happy to help you if you're wanting to either click on many times on the NRFA website or use the API. So just to sum up, we're kind of developing and evolving the services and tools that we provide through the National River Flow Archive and National Hydrological Monitoring Programme over time, with some exciting developments in the future, including harnessing machine learning, increasing the access to real-time data, maybe adding other data sets, thinking how we might include Earth observation data, or whether that's seasonal forecasts like those produced in the Hydrological Outlook for the UK. But really critically providing those additional tools to help you access data and the analysis that we do in a way that makes it easy for you to get what you need. But that's importantly, making those innovations whilst continuing to produce those key NRFA and NHMP outputs of daily and peak river flow data, and delivering key monitoring products like the hydrological summary, both of which are really important, thinking about managing changes in hydrology in kind of our changing world and in our climate emergency. So I think that's me. I think just about in time, hopefully, Hayley. And yeah, so thank you, everybody. That was us.
Thanks to both of you. We're kind of running out of time. If we've got one quick question, maybe we could have a quick question. I can't see anything in. Oh no, maybe there is something. Hang on.
Yeah. Be something from Monitor.
Yeah, from Monitor. As we share more of the original sub-daily records held by the EA, might we see people being able to access multiple data sets for a single site that don't agree, as alterations have been made through the validation processes at NRFA, but not always fed back to measuring authorities? Do you think?
Yeah, this is an ongoing discussion, also, which we came out. It was the first sort of set of live data on the Hydrology API came out, and there was a reconciliation task which I undertook slowly in trying to get to the bottom of what those differences are, and it's something that needs quite big resourcing to be able to resolve, because we've come across a whole load of differences that need sorting out. Either well, the EA have something where we don't, or we have something where they don't, or they're different. So it kind of goes both ways. So yeah, there's a long discussion that's needed about how we go about fixing those. Also, this in the archive we have a lot of data that predates what's in Whiskey and the EA's archive. So there's a whole load of things that need untangling as we kind of progress through the open data world that need fixing. It's not an easy solution, but always happy to chat about it. So just get in touch.